Welcome to Canadian Coffee House Crime. My name is Catherine. Today's story is coming from Port Coquitlam, is a city in British Columbia, Canada, 27 kilometers east of Vancouver. It is one of the three tri-cities in Metro Vancouver, alongside Coquitlam and Port Moody. Port Coquitlam is an area in the lower mainland, located southwest of Coquitlam and north of the Fraser River. It has a population of around 60,000 residents. Port Coquitlam was first incorporated as a municipality on March 7, 1913. Port Coquitlam was originally developed mostly as farmland. Given the expansion and increasing density of Vancouver, it has now been developed for suburban housing. Terry Fox's family moved to Port Coquitlam in 1968 when Terry was 10 years old and called Port Coquitlam home for the remainder of his life. At the Giggle Dam Dinner Theater, you can enjoy a four-course dinner while watching a live show. Check out the Poco Grand Prix, the women and men's pro event featuring top cyclists from around the world. And the Polish festival that is held for one day in May. Try some traditional dishes and drinks from Poland. Taste typical cuisine from the country like pierogies, sausage, ham hocks, desserts, and Polish beer. You can find vendors selling beautiful forms of art, crafts, see energetic entertainment, and lots of beautiful costumes. On February 2002, police executed a search warrant for illegal firearms at the property owned by Robert Pickton, 54 years old, and his three siblings at 963 Dominion Avenue. 963 Dominion Avenue is 40 minutes east of downtown Vancouver, nestled between a golf resort, an elementary school, and newly formed townhouse subdivision. We find on one side of the street a brand new mall that includes Save-On Foods, the Home Depot, a massive Costco, and Starbucks. Across the street sits Robert Pickton's pig farm. On the 10 acres of land was home of an unlicensed pig slaughterhouse, nicknamed the Piggy Palace, patrolled by a 600-pound boar that would chase and bite you. Other animals on the farm were cows, pigs, sheep, goats, and llamas. The property was zoned for agricultural use, but the family had altered a large farm building on the land for the purpose of holding dances, concerts, and other recreations that sometimes drew as many as 1,800 people. There would be drunken raves that featured entertainment by an ever-changing cast of the downtown east side Vancouver's prostitutes. The pig farm had been previously examined 5 years earlier when Robert was charged with an attempted murder in March 1997 of a drug-addicted prostitute, Wendy Lynn Eistetter, whom he had stabbed several times at the farm. Wendy told police that Pickton handcuffed and attacked her, but that she escaped after disarming him and stabbing him with his own knife. A motorist found Wendy beside the highway and took her to the nearest emergency room. Robert was released on a $2,000 bond, but the charge was later dismissed without explanation in January 1998. On February 6, 2002, after police searched his farmland, Robert Pickton was taken into custody, jailed on a charge of storing a firearm contrary to regulations, possession of a firearm while not being a holder of a license, and possession of a loaded restricted firearm without a license. He was later released and kept under police surveillance. During the search of the farm for firearms, a rookie policeman found something. A second search warrant was obtained when inside a silver bag found in Pickton's messy office room contained an asthma inhaler prescribed to a missing woman named Serena Abbotsway. An organization called the BC Missing Women were informed and a thorough search of the farm commenced. In 1963, Leonard Pickton and his wife Helen bought 40 acres of swamp for only $18,000. They towed a blue and white farmhouse to the site and began raising children and pigs. They had 2 sons, Robert and David, and a daughter, Linda, who was brought up in Vancouver, but brothers Robert and David remained on the farm with its shit, its smells, its blood, and butchery. Their father died in 1978 and their mother died in 1979. The brothers then, in their late 20s, inherited the farm with their sister. Their farmland was purchased for $18,000 in 1963. By 1994, it was valued at $7.2 million. In the fall of 1994, they sold a part of the farm for $1.7 million to a townhouse development. That same year, the city of Port Coquitlam bought a chunk of their land for $1.2 million and turned it into a park. In 1995, Port Coquitlam School District bought a piece of the pig farm for $2.3 million and built Blakeburn Elementary School on the site. Linda, Robert, and David were rich millionaires. Robert William Willie Pickton was born October 24th, 1949. Robert and his younger brother David Francis Pickton began working at the farm at an early age, and their mother was very demanding, prioritizing the pigs over the brothers' personal hygiene and forcing them to work long hours raising the farm's livestock. She often sent them to school in unwashed, dirty clothes, reeking of manure, and earning the brothers the nickname Stinky Piggy from their classmates. Pickton was strongly attached to his mother and had little interaction with his abusive father. Pickton struggled in school, being put in a special class after failing the 2nd grade. He dropped out of school in 1963 and began working as a meat cutter. He continued to do so for nearly 7 years before leaving to work full-time at the farm. Pickton was described as a pretty quiet guy, hard to strike up a conversation with, whose occasional bizarre behavior, despite no evidence of substance abuse, would draw attention. He wanted to be a Hell's Angel, but everyone knew he was a weasel and a wannabe. Robert Pickton was, by the mid-1990s, no longer a serious commercial pig farmer. He was a wealthy man, raising hogs, and was more of a hobby. He bought the pigs, fattened them, and sold the meat to friends, or roasted them for the bikers, prostitutes, mayors, and little leaguers who often party at Piggy's Palace. The entire city of Port Coquitlam was feeding on pigs that had been fed by Robert Pickton. Vancouver downtown east side is where Pickton picked up many women. Pickton liked to hang out in the seediest hotels on East Hastings Street, the most notorious of which were the Roosevelt Hotel on Main Street and the Astoria Hotel on Hawk Street. In 1995, when the Picktons became millionaires, women began to go missing in alarming numbers from the downtown east side of Vancouver. In 1997, when he was charged and let off on the attempted murder of Wendy Eitstetter, 30 more women went missing from the downtown east side. Though they had no corpses or hard evidence to back their claims, prostitutes and social workers started to suspect a serial killer was responsible for the disappearance of the local sex trade workers. The victims ranged in age were from 19 to 46. The missing women reportedly sold sex to feed their intravenous cocaine or heroin habits. Some had HIV, hepatitis, or both. They all left behind their belongings, bank account, children in foster care, and welfare checks. The issue of the missing women was brought to national attention in March 1999 when Jamie Lee Hamilton, a transsexual and former prostitute, now director of a drop-in center for sex trade workers, called a news conference to bring the disappearances to the public. Relatives of the missing blamed authorities for ignoring the situation, and authorities stepped up their investigative efforts. On December 8, 1999, Constable Drennan had said that nothing pointed towards a serial killer being involved. There were no crime scenes, corpses, or any other tangible evidence. Cavalier dogs were used to search selected areas by detectives. Police sent missing persons reports to psychiatric hospitals, morgues, and welfare offices across Canada and the United States. Of the original 31 women reported missing, only 2 of them were located. One died from heart problems. The other had died of a heroin overdose. A list of bad Johns from information obtained from task force, social workers, and sex trade workers had 50 potential suspects. On July 31st, 1999, the case was featured on America's Most Wanted. Some women believe the killer was a border hopper, the Green River Killer, coming from the United States. Some thought it was a snuff film ring or a lethal merchant marine crew kidnapping the women and murdering them at sea. Then, on February 6, 2002, during a police search for weapons, when missing woman Serena Abbotsway asthma inhaler was found in Robert Pickton's office, all hell broke loose. Pickton was rearrested February 22nd based on DNA. The first charges laid against Pickton were for the slayings of Mona Wilson and Serena Abbotsway. On June 6, 2002, the excavation started, and the search for human remains at the farm resembled the massive undertaking at Ground Zero after the World War Trade Center disaster. There were earth movers, dump trucks, payloaders, 50-foot flat conveyor belts with soil sifters to find the traces of remains. Involved were forensic scientists, 102 anthropologists, odontologists, foot morphologists, chemical biologists, archaeologists, and a forensic entomology. The scientists that worked on the death farm were looking for the smallest of traces, shifting through the dirt for bone fragments, for anything that was large and fresh enough to yield its DNA. They spent 2 years sifting through 370,000 cubic yards of mud and pig manure, looking for pieces of missing women. They stripped the trailers and the buildings. For some reason, I find the fact that he had 2 deceased horses taxidermized and put on his walls rather weird. Forensic experts were flown in to determine whether what was found was from human or from a pig. In a tent and makeshift refuge, family members gathered daily, waiting for news that would fill in the details of what may have happened to their daughters, sisters, and lovers. When the search ended, police say they had collected thousands of samples of human DNA. As police uncovered more and more evidence, Pickton was charged with 27 murders. On November 18, 2003, investigators wrapped up the mass excavation and the search of the Pickton property. The investigation into Pickton would become Canada's largest serial killer case and would take years and cost more than $100 million, eventually requiring the resources of virtually every police lab in Canada capable of testing DNA. On March 10, 2004, it was revealed that human flesh may have been ground up and mixed with pork from the farm. This pork was never distributed commercially, but was handed out to friends and visitors on the farm, that he fed the bodies directly to his pigs. An associate named Andrew Bellwood said Pickton mentioned killing prostitutes by handcuffing and strangling them, then bleeding and gutting them before feeding them to pigs. Contents of a garbage can found in Pickton's slaughterhouse held some remains of Mona Wilson. In the freezers Pickton used to store unsold meat, the feet, heads, and hands of 2 missing women were purported to be found. Also found on the junk-strewn farm were ID cards, clothes, teeth, purses, and other personal effects that later linked to the missing. Not one body was found intact. A wood chipper and Mr. Pickton's pigs are believed to have devoured much of the evidence. There were no whole bodies at the pig farm. The women were drugged and dragged across the room. They were slaughtered, their heads were sawed off, their body parts were refrigerated, and their bones discarded. Robert Pickton was charged with first-degree murder, killing 27 women, but police investigated the cases of 63 women who disappeared from downtown Eastside during the 20 years before his arrest. The case was massive, and so was the investigation. It took 5 long years to reach a courtroom. Pickton pleaded not guilty to the horrifying charges against him. On January 22, 2007, the trial finally starts, New Westminster, BC. Police said Pickton began his killing spree in 1991, luring women from the downtown east side to his farm, where they were murdered and the remains were either taken to a rendering plant or buried. The first time he killed was 1991. He was a fully functioning serial killer by the time of 1995. The DNA of 33 women was found on his farm. He boasted in jail to an undercover officer in 2002 that he had murdered 49 women in total, but was starting to get sloppy, leaving human remains scattered on the farm. On December 9, 2007, the jury returned a verdict that Pickton was not guilty on 6 counts of first-degree murder, but was guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder. On December 11, 2007, Pickton was sentenced to life with no possibility of parole for 25 years, the maximum punishment for second-degree murder. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Catherine, and this is Canadian Coffeehouse Crime, video number 34, on September 15th, 2023. Please feel free to press the like button as it helps with my exposure, and subscribe to my channel. I try to put out a new video every week. See you in the next case.